Hello and welcome to the 100th episode of the DJ Project Criterion Collection. And what do we talk about on this special occasion? Well, moving right along through the spine numbers, or at least the ones that I have, we go into Spine 381, haine, directed by Mathieu Kassovitz, 1995. Kind of interesting. This comes right off the heels of talking about bicycle thieves, and to reiterate, it's when you look at bicycle thieves and then the films that came, it's almost impossible. I think it was because of bicycle thieves that you have these other films that came after it. You wouldn't. I think without bicycle thieves, you wouldn't have Canal. You wouldn't have Ashes and Diamonds. You wouldn't have The Forward Blows. You wouldn't have Hiroshima Mon Amour. You wouldn't have Breathless, and Last Year at Marienbad, and La Ventura, and all the rest. And certainly, interestingly enough, you wouldn't have something like haine. Now, haine was it's set in the One Wells, and I'm sure I'm botching the name of this, and my profound apologies for this, but the Bon Wells, I think is how you say it. It's Banlieus, the Banlieue, I think is how you say it. I could be wrong. Anyways, this is the French equivalent of housing projects. Is probably the best way to describe this. But for France, whereas the housing projects we tend to associate more in the inner cities, this is actually in the way outskirts of Paris, and this is where the French immigrant populations all reside, and it's in the outskirts. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's really hard to get to any place, especially going into Paris. And because of this isolation, it breeds resentment, or it breeds hate. Hence the title La Haine. The film was driven by that issue, and not only that, but also the episodes of French police brutality in those areas, and with French minorities, and Kassovitz wanted to do something about this. So again, this is very appropriate that I talk about this off the heels of bicycle thieves. And while he wanted it to be genuine and real, he still thinks of this as more of a fable, and this is more of a look at what that kind of environment will do to someone, and particularly to young men, and how they think about the world, how they perceive the world, what kind of actions they take. It's sort of all those things, but it's also done in a, for lack of a better word, entertaining way. It's not to trivialize it or to make it marginal. I mean, it was very politically charged and very socially charged, but it was not done in an alienating way. I mean, for instance, or another way of putting this, Kassovitz's own cinematic influence. He would talk a lot about being influenced by Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese and Spike Lee. In fact, there are several shots that are nods to Do the Right Thing, and then there's also some other shots that were nods to Taxi Driver. And by the way, it was Jodie Foster who helped distribute this film in the United States. So how's that for connections? And I think because of that, she was able to send Martin Scorsese a copy of the film, and Mathieu Kassovitz found that he was very touched by that gesture. But anyways, so So that shows that this was that it was important for him to have it be, you know, a good, entertaining film. And he also commented that this was kind of a reaction or kind of an answer to the French cinema that was going on in the 1980s, which I think he was talking more about like sort of the character study, the character-driven stuff, like I mentioned Maurice Pilat, and I think he wanted to kind of avoid all that and to do something that was more socially relevant, that dealt with issues, but also not do it in a polemic way. It was trying to avoid any kind of polemics. And in that respect, I don't know if he was, I'm sure he must have been conscious of this, but I would say that he also would owe something to Costa-Gavras, because he's another filmmaker where he deals with political issues or has stories that are situated in politically charged situations, but they don't come off as polemic. They're compelling, and they're compelling and entertaining, but they're able to do more as well. It's not just mere entertainment. You know, that component is there, but there's also more to it, and that's what you get from La Haine. And La Haine is the story of, it's actually over the course of 24 hours. It's the story of three youths. And by the way, this is the film that helped launch Vincent Cassel's acting career. But these three friends, Vince is French Jewish, but he lives in the Buñuels. His other friend Hubert is from North Africa. Well, actually, no, is actually African, and Saeed is Arab and presumably possibly from Algeria, or has connections into Algeria. And so they're kind of they, in one sense, they do represent the major French minorities in the major minority groups in France. There's also something to their personalities. There's something about their personalities that represent particular temperaments. Vince is very quick and very hot-headed. Hubert comes off as the reserved one, and having some wisdom, and even comes through as a voice of reason. And Saeed is the poor fool. He's the young guy that everybody likes to pick on. And it seems like just like another day in the ghetto, as if you like. I'm not going to botch any more French because I think I've embarrassed myself already with that. But anyways, so it's just like another day of the projects, and it starts to sort of change for them. And actually, that's the thing that it kind of captures really, really well, is that in that kind of environment where you're so isolated and so alienated from everybody, you almost have like no purpose whatsoever. You just kind of live through the days, and you're just hoping that they all just go away, or that you're more closer to the grave than you were yesterday. I mean, it's that depressing. But anyways, it starts to change when Vince finds a gun. Apparently, it was one of the times when the police were there, and a riot had broken out, and a cop left his gun there. Now, the firearms in France is a lot different than firearms in the United States. And yes, I know that's subject to heated debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But since this is France, the notion of having a firearm on you suddenly makes things a lot more interesting. And so he's able to carry this, and he has this mission to go in and to shoot the fucking pigs. He does outright say this. I think it's probably a combination of both actual French and what's there in translation. But anyways, and eventually they do take the rail out to Paris, and actually there is a bit of a contrast. They see that they see a completely different world in view. And there's even a moment where the police are actually quite nice to them, whereas in most of their experience, the police are quite atrocious to them. But it still doesn't really, they're still out on this mission. Well, part of it to try to get, and actually what drives it, and actually this is what drove the film, was that there was somebody who was killed in the middle of police interrogation, and so there's that similar motivation, and so basically the call is that if he dies, then someone in the police is gonna die as kind of retaliation, and this film also showcases the vicious cycle of violence. When you do violence to somebody, then they turn around and do violence onto you, and then it just becomes this vicious cycle, this back and forth of one group doing harm to another. And this is why it's better to see this as a fable. It's better approached as a fable. Yes, driven by a particular social issue, especially unique to France. But I think if it worked solely on that, then it wouldn't be as interesting. It certainly wouldn't have had a certain international appeal. Now, you could say that part of it was that because of the political motivations, but I think even without that, there's still something about it that is still very appealing and very much worth viewing. So, in that respect, I would say, if you are inclined to that, if you like your films socially relevant, and especially if you like to see, especially if you want to see political issues in other countries, and actually it is interesting to see this as an American, particularly since Kassovitz, he cites Spielberg and Scorsese and particularly Spike Lee, and to see the kind of, and it's kind of blasé and a little bit disingenuous to call this the French version of Do the Right Thing, but there are some interesting intersections, and of course there are some nice little homages here and there from Do the Right Thing, but there are some parallels, there are some intersections, and there are some similarities. And by the way, this is also why I do not consider Crash 2004 much, because in my mind I think, wasn't that already done with Do the Right Thing? And then you can even pull it international and say La Haine also deals with the same similar issues too. But again, that while it deals with similar issues, but it's also very much rooted in France, and the way that France has historically dealt with it is much different than the way the United States has done it. I'm not saying one is right or wrong, but it's interesting to see how that is portrayed. And then, like I've said this once, and I'll say it again throughout the whole thing. I've said it for 100 episodes, and I'm going to say it for another 50, whenever it comes up. Art at its best is when it serves as a mirror, when it serves as a reflection of who we are. And then once faced with that reflection, you ask yourself, do I want to continue down this route, or do I want to do something different? And that is art at its best. And in that sense, La Haine is definitely worth viewing, especially if you are concerned about social issues and you want to learn as much as you can about various social issues in order to come up with better solutions to things, and try to make the world a better place. Try to leave the world better than how you came into it. At least that's a worthy aspiration. And maybe that's just the idealism talking. Maybe it just all goes to shit in the end, and who fucking cares? But it's at least worth the effort, right? And by the way, this is also a demonstration that there's more to Kassovitz besides playing a part in Amélie and also directing Gothica. So yeah. 100 episodes. We're 2/3 done. And boy, oh boy. And I need some sleep. So, and that was La Haine. And until next time.